We can go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samantha Vergara. I work with the City of Milpitas, handling our water conservation programs and projects, and I will be the moderator for tonight's class. And we will be talking about how to choose the best plants to fit your landscape goals. And this presentation is being sponsored by the City of Milpitas and BOSCA, or the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency. Just to get started today, I'll be going over some guidelines for participating in the class. First and foremost, all attendees are going to be muted by default. This is so that we can reduce the amount of background noise that occurs during the presentation. And we will also be stopping periodically through the presentation to allow you to ask any questions that you have. We highly encourage you to submit any questions, as it will probably be helpful for both you and some of the other audience members. And there are two ways that you can submit your questions today. You can use the raise hand feature over at the bottom of your Zoom window, or you can type in your question into the chat. Into the Q&A feature. If you raise your hand, I will go ahead and pause the presentation and allow you to unmute yourself to verbally ask the question. And if you type it out, I can read it out for the class and we can address it that way. And as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and it will be made available in a couple of days. I will send out a link to the recording to you in a couple of days once that's all uploaded and ready to go. And just before we get started, let's do a quick little introduction of BOSCA. Again, BOSCA stands for the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, and they are a special agency that represents 26 agencies that include a city, water districts, water companies, and a university, all of whom purchase water from the San Francisco Regional Water System. And the BOSCA member agencies provide water to over 1.8 million people and over 40,000 businesses across Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo County. And BOSCA's main goal is to ensure a high quality supply of water to its member agencies and their own customers at a fair price. And one of the ways that BOSCA promotes water conservation is by looking at outdoor water use. Outdoor water use represents the single largest untapped source of water conservation within the entire BOSCA service area. And BOSCA promotes water conservation outdoors through the use of water efficient plants and sustainable gardening techniques to help you conserve water so that we can ensure a future water supply for our community. There are lots of different ways that you can save water, and BOSCA has several different rebates and incentive programs to help you do so. One of them being the Lawn Be Gone landscape conversion rebate. Through this rebate program, you can get up to $4 per square foot of lawn that is removed and replaced with drought-tolerant plants and landscape materials. They also offer rebates for installing rain barrels, so that way you can catch water that would ultimately run off your roof so that you can reuse it at a later time. There are also rebates available for switching out an irrigation controller with a weather-based irrigation controller. And there are rebates as well for installing a rain garden in your landscape. If you're located in Milpitas, there are also some opportunities for you to participate in some rebate programs as well. Similar to BOSCA, we have rebates available for replacing turf with drought-tolerant plants. We also have a rain barrel and rain garden rebate. And we do also offer a rebate for installing a laundry to landscape gray water system. So that way you can divert some of the water that's used in your laundry over to your landscape so you don't have to use potable water. There are a couple of other free programs available as well, such as the residential and commercial irrigation surveys. And we do offer free water conservation items to order to your home on the online shopping cart. And if you're interested in any of these programs, you can find more information at savewatermilpitas.org. Here are a couple of other ways that you can help us save water in Milpitas. We have the WaterSmart customer portal, which connects to the smart water meters outside of your homes and businesses. And it's a really great tool for investigating high water bills, getting a better understanding of how you currently use water, and to kind of give you an idea of what you can do to continue to conserve. And then another really important thing that you can do in Milpitas is report water waste when you see it. So if you see broken sprinklers being used or sprinklers going off at the wrong times of day, you can call into the water conservation hotline or submit a report through the My Milpitas app, and then we'll go out there and investigate and make sure that the water waste is being addressed. If you are located in the South Bay or closer to Santa Clara County, there are rebates available to you through Valley Water. Again, they offer rebates for projects such as landscape conversions, switching out old irrigation equipment, and installing rainwater capture devices and systems. And here are some links to some resources for that landscape rebate program, and I can send these out in my follow-up email with the link to the webinar recording. Some additional links here as well. And if you enjoyed today's class, there are going to be a few more coming up in the next month or so. We'll be covering topics such as landscape conversions, rainwater harvesting, landscape design, and much more. And you can find information about all of the classes and register for them at BOSCA's website, bayareaconservation.org. And if you're interested after this webinar, there's lots of great resources available at bayareagardening.org. So if you're looking for inspiration or more information to help you incorporate sustainability in your landscapes, this is a great place to visit. And with that, I'm gonna stop my share and allow Frank to share his presentation and we can get started.
Okay. Good evening. So when you select a plant, you are determining your future self's maintenance requirements. So if I select a plant that is going to be used as a hedge and I formally prune it, I'm going to increase my water use significantly, and I'm going to increase my maintenance use significantly. So before you purchase a plant, think about it. Think about how much time it's going to cause you to lose. So many of our plant purchases are influenced by spontaneity. So I go to a nursery, I see this plant and I say, I need to have it. I want to have it. I'm going to buy it. Not thinking about water requirements, sunshade, just purchasing it. And by the way, do you buy this plant or do you buy this plant? This plant or this plant? Awful quiet out there. So this is not the plant you buy. This is a sucker's punch. The nurseries are trying to get you to buy this plant because it's all pretty and it's blooming, and you take it home and you put it in the ground, and the first thing that happens is all the blooms fall off and the plant begins to struggle. So let's think about this. A plant needs a lot of metabolic energy to bloom. And so you buy a plant that is blooming and you take it home and you pop it out of its container and you plant it. and it goes into stress because it's being transplanted. So you have a plant that has already used a lot of metabolic energy to bloom, and then you have further caused it decline by popping it out of the can and putting it in the ground, and it goes into transplant shock. So don't buy blooming plants unless you're trying to determine a specific color for a plant. So many people buy their plants during the bloom period because they want to make sure it's the right color. That's the only time you buy a blooming plant. All other times you don't. If I'm buying, I was a landscape contractor for 38 years, and I would buy wholesale plants. When you go to the wholesale plant nursery, I don't want blooming plants. I don't want them to give me blooming plants. I want plants that are healthy. I don't want plants that are using up their metabolic energy to bloom. So that's the first thing that you need to think about. Well, the second thing, you need to think about your future self. In terms of sustainability, dying and dead plants are not sustainable. And so when you purchase a plant, you need to understand a few things. How is it going to be irrigated? Is it going to be drip system? Or is it going to be a spray system? California natives do not like drip systems, period. Unless it's one specific type of drip system called Netafim. And I'll pull that up so you know what Netafim looks like. So many, I want Netafim. Many drip systems are 1/4 inch drip. 1/4 inch drip systems plug. Not if, when. Don't buy 1/4 inch. Don't buy these things. Don't buy these emitters. They plug. Our water comes from Hetch Hetchy. Our water has particulate matter in it. And it clogs these 1/4 inch drip lines and these emitters. And the only way that you know that you have a clog is when you plantize. So first thing, how are you going to irrigate that plant that you're going to purchase? Netafim is the only drip system that actually works. And there are many configurations to Netafim. I'm going to find the emitter on this, and I want to show you why it works. Let's see. So the emitter is a specific kind of emitter. Here it is. So when water enters this emitter, this emitter has fins on it. Let's see if this is a better one. So this is the emitter that's inside of the Netafim, and it has fins on the other side. And so when the water hits these fins, it begins to spin, and it spins the particulate matter to the outside, and it's flushed to the end of the coil. So you want to get Netafim, and there's two types. There's 17 mil and 12 mil, 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch. What did Frank say about 1/4 inch? It clogs, not if, when. 17 mil Netafim tech line does not clog. You can get it in different flow rates, depending on what you're doing. So 6 inch, 12 inch emitter spacing, 18 inch and 24 inch. So if I'm growing spinach, I'm obviously going to use a 6 inch spacing. If I'm growing tomatoes, it's going to be 12 or 18. And if I'm on a sandy soil, I'm going to buy Netafim that's going to give me more water than if I'm on a clay soil. So I can get it at 0.242 gallons per minute flow rate. I can get it at 0.9 flow rate. So determine what type of soil that you have. How do I determine what type of soil do I have? It's really complicated. You take a jar and you put a scoop of soil in it, and you add a tablespoon of soap, Dawn dishwashing detergent, whatever, and then fill it up with water. Shake it. And then set it down on the ground and leave it alone for an hour. And the soil particles are going to begin to settle out. And it's going to tell you what your soil texture is. So at the end of an hour, I'm going to take a tape measure, and I'm going to be able to see 3 distinct lines here. Sand is on the bottom, silt is in the middle, clay is on top, organic matter is above that, and it's usually floating. So I take my tape measure and I measure the entire volume of soil in here. And then I measure the individual sand, silt, and clay. And I know the percentages at that point. And then I come over to here and I look at this. So if I have, and people are always surprised when they do this, but it is so necessary. They think they have a certain type of soil in their yard, and about 50 to 80%, they're wrong. I've had students who do this test in my soil class, and they come to the class and they say, oh, geez, I thought I had a clay loam. And in fact, they have a sandy loam. So this is really easy to use. If I have a 50% silt and an 80%, or let's say, 50% silt, and I have a 20% clay, what's going to hit somewhere in here? You probably have seen this triangle, but you never understood what it's used for. Why do I care about what my soil texture is? If I've got a sandy soil, I need to irrigate more often. If I have a clay soil, I'm going to irrigate a lot less. What about fertilization? If I have a sandy soil, fertilizer is going to run through this soil at a much higher rate than if I have a clay soil. So my fertilizer requirements are different. I'm going to irrigate more on a sandy soil than I am on a clay soil. If I'm buying plant material that needs good drainage and I have a clay soil, it's better to just cut that plant to the ground the minute you leave the nursery, because it's going to end up dying anyway. So just save yourself the trouble. In fact, don't even buy the damn thing because it's going to die. You need to know your soil. And so many people are clueless when it comes to understanding their soils. Your soil is going to determine your infiltration rate, which means how fast water moves into the soil. Clay soils hold water because they're smaller particles, so you're watering less. And it also affects your pH. So when we talk about pH, it's the availability of plant nutrients. If I'm buying azaleas, rhododendrons, and camellias, then I need to be here. I need to be in the acidic. I need to be slightly acid or very slightly acid for this thing to work. So 6.0 to 7.0. If I'm up here and if I'm on well water, I'm at 8.1. Azaleas, camellias, and rhododendrons are not going to work. Look at the nutrients and where they fall on the various pH of the soil. How do I test pH? Again, really complicated. Get a litmus strip, dip it into this thing that I showed you how to make, and then compare the colors. And then I know my pH. And then I know what kinds of elements I need to keep my plants alive. So if I'm growing citrus, citrus needs a lot of iron and it needs a lot of zinc. Well, if I'm in this area here, which is 7.0, 7.5, iron is starting to drop out. My citrus is going to be chlorotic, as well as zinc is going to drop out. So citrus wants to be around here, where there's plenty of iron, but wait, Frank, there's no nitrogen. So I need to understand my pH so I know what the plants are going to need. If I'm in this range, I'm going to have to add iron, a chelated iron or a zinc or a combination of iron and zinc to get my plants to work. So getting the soil texture and getting your soil pH are the first things you do before you even think about going to that nursery to buy a plant. Important. If in fact you are trying to conserve water, then a drip system is the way to go, but you need to know what system you're going to be using before you even go. Many plants are subject to diseases if they're overwatered. So right now we're in a transition zone. It's warm during the day and cool at night. So we're seeing a lot of powdery mildew out there on our plant material. We also have a predicted rain event that's either going to be Saturday or Tuesday. And when we have a predicted rain event, do we water on Friday night? Well, if you want to waste water, you can water on Friday night. But if it's a predictive water event, you should have your irrigation controller shut down. So, selecting plants. Think about your future self and how much maintenance this plant is going to cause you and your future self. What kind of pruning requirements does it need? When does it need to be pruned? How much water does it need, and how often does it need that water? So citrus are heavy water users. They're heavy fertilizer users. They also like to be watered deeply once a week. So if I have citrus growing in my garden in and around other plants who are getting watered every other day, citrus has less of a chance to survive and produce viable fruit than if it was on its own circuit and getting deep water once a week. So I need to know my water system. I need to know fertilizer requirements. So certain plants need certain kinds of fertilizers. Citrus, heavy feeder. Tomatoes, heavy feeders. Rhododendrons, azaleas, camellias, daphnes, heavy feeders. They like fertilizer often. California natives, on the other hand, do not like any fertilizer. None. And I see a lot of people buying fertilizer for their California natives, and they're just wasting it. And of course, they're going to kill the natives. So understand the cultural requirements of your plants even before you go to the nursery. Planting is 80% of your success rate. Proper planting is the other 20%. What kind of diseases do I have in my garden? What has died here before? And why did it die? If you like a certain plant and you keep buying them and they're dying, then you need to find out why they're dying. Is there a disease that is causing them to die? Do I have ants? The ants will pick up aphids and physically move them around and put them on the roots of your plants because they want the sugar carbohydrates that the aphids produce from excess carbohydrates that they eat. So one of the first things that you do if you have plants that continually die is to look around and see if you've got an ant problem. Those little suckers are vicious when it comes to plants, especially California natives. They'll kill more manzanitas than ceanothus than diseases will. And people are always surprised when I say, oh, look for the ants. So you need to understand the disease parameters of the plants that you're going to buy. If you're buying a maple tree, do I have verticillium wilt in my garden? I can get a soil test for $75 that'll tell me that. It's better than spending $250 on a maple tree, planting it, and 6 months later it's dead. So be wise before you buy. Get your homework done first. So what died here before is a real good parameter. Keep a log of your garden so that you understand the types of plants that you planted here before, and so you don't make the same mistakes twice. Impulse buying is how the nurseries sell more plant material. And that's how they get you on the bloom, not bloom plant. They want you to buy the blooming plant. And they will upcharge, by the way, for a blooming plant in comparison to a plant that's not blooming. Wind. If I'm buying a plant like a Japanese maple, well, it's very susceptible to wind damage. I cannot put a Japanese maple up on Highway 92 up near 280 because every afternoon that wind roars through there and it'll tear those maples apart. It'll tear plants that do not take wind to pieces. Ferns don't do well up there. Plants dry out quickly up in that corridor. What kind of wind do you have on your property? And will that plant take wind? Reflected heat. Many plants don't like reflected heat. Reflected heat is off a sidewalk, a building, blacktop, a driveway. And so putting plants near those areas not only will cause the plant to need more water, but it could kill the plant because it doesn't like the heat. It's too much reflected heat. Muhlenbergia rhygens or deer grass will take as much heat as you can give it. And so that's a great plant in an area where there's a lot of reflected heat because it will take it. Are there any questions out there before I continue on?
Yeah, we got a question from Bill. He was asking, what is your recommendation or your recommended way of controlling ants in the landscape? We have a large backyard, 40 by 100 feet, and we seem to see ants whenever we go to plant.
Yeah, that's a great question. You definitely do not want to use a chemical that you would get at big box. There is a couple of different things. I'm going to share a screen and I'll pull up one that I like to use. Let me do this. And I'm going to put in here. And I'm going to give you a couple of different things. So taro is a good one. And it is using a boric acid base. And you can get a bunch of different formulations. You can get, I don't think I'm going to sign up now. Thank you very much. Liquid ant bait for inside, ant dust granules. And taro makes a spray. Outdoors, I use this one. This is the liquid ant bait for outdoors. Very effective. So the ants go into this container and they pick up a bit of the chemical and they might take a little bite out of it, but they'll take it back to the nest and they'll feed it to the larva and the queen, and you can wipe out a nest in about 10 days. And that's the goal. You want to wipe out that nest. So taro is a real good one. The other thing I would recommend is something called Rinconvatova. And Rinkenvetova is an insectary. And this is their website. And I can go products for ants. And it'll tell me everything I need to know about ants. They even have a recipe for making your own ant bait recipe. Don't use this around pets. Dogs will lap this up and it will make them sick. So if you've got pets, don't make this. Get the taro and use that instead. There is also the Ant Pro bait station, which is what I have around my house. And I have 3 stations and I use a liquid bait. I use this gourmet liquid ant bait, which is disodium octaborate. It's boric acid, essentially. And it works quite well on ants. So I hope that answered your question. Mulch requirements. So mulch is there for 2 reasons. And certain plants want certain kinds of mulches. So it's a matter of whether the environment around that plant is bacterial or fungal. If it's bacterial, which is annuals and vegetables, they want bacteria food, rice straw. You don't put wood chips around veggies because it's fungal in nature. So bacteria eats little things, fungus eats big things. So anyone that's ever had athlete's foot know that it's a fungus trying to eat you. And so you're going to use fungal food around your natives, your trees, but never around your veggies. That mulch is there so that the fungus can eat it. And it converts that mulch into usable food for the plant material. When I had my company, I would always get pushback from clients. We put mulch in last year. It looks fine to me. The mulch isn't there for you. It's there for the plants. Get over yourself. Spend $1 or $2 to help your plants grow. So they use what is called mycorrhizal fungi to funnel nutrients in and amongst themselves. So a mycorrhizal fungal net needs food. What does it eat? It eats mulch. You can pull your mulch aside and you see these little whitish shoestring looking things. That's mycorrhizal fungi, and it's doing its job. So you want to look at the mulch requirements for your plants. The mulch requirements are going to be determined by the type of plant that it is. Bacteria, annuals, veggies, and lawns. And so if you're doing a lawn conversion, you're actually trying to convert a bacterial environment to a fungal environment, and you've got to involve lots and lots of mulch. A lawn is dead soil. There's not a lot of life in under lawns. But in a fungal environment, there's a ton of life because there's lots of food. And I'm not saying that fungus is the overreaching element that is necessary, because you also need bacteria in that soil. But the plants themselves react better to a fungal environment if they are old growth, trees, and California natives, and many of the perennials that you see about. The other part of mulch is that certain plants do not like mulch around their base. Camellias, azaleas, and rhododendrons like the mulch to be pulled away from the base of the plant so they don't get petal blight. They also like the mulch to be replaced once a year, especially camellias. So the mulch requirements are something that you need to think about when you're buying a plant. Again, we're talking about your future self, the amount of maintenance and the amount of money that you're going to be spending on this particular plant as your future self. So mulch requirements. Obviously, insect problems are something that you should know before you purchase a plant. What insects will I have to deal with? And on the other hand, does it bring in beneficials? I want to attract beneficials to my garden and let the insects eat the aphids. So what kinds of plants bring in beneficials? Well, plants, some of the best plants out there are plants with umbels. So an umbel looks like this. This happens to be, yeah, know your umbels from your panicle. Oh, I like that. This happens to be St. Anne's lace, I think. This is an umbel. Yarrow has umbels. Well, I didn't want to go there. So any plant with umbels usually attracts beneficials. They, in particular, like syrphid flies, are usually on in and around umbels, and syrphid flies eat about 50 aphids a day. So they have lots of research here. 45 umbel plant ideas. Know your umbels from your panicles. Botany. What does an umbel look like? That sort of stuff. So plants that attract insects are usually plants with umbels. That type of flower. I'm not saying that other flowers don't do it, but umbels are the best to attract a lot of your beneficials. So when you're buying a particular kind of plant, you're putting a plant into what is called a guild. You have other plants that are out there. And how you support your planting guild by putting a plant in affects all the plants in that guild. So, and as an example, if I'm buying plants that are in the pea family, they have a nodule on their roots that produces nitrogen. They're called nitrogen fixing plants. So if I want to lessen the amount of fertilizer that I'm using in my garden, especially around plants that are heavy feeders, I'm going to be buying and installing plants in the pea family so that I can get nitrogen from them. If I'm thinking about this planting guild, I'm going to bring in plants that attract pollinators. I'm going to buy plants that are going to attract the beneficial insects. I'm going to buy plants that keep the insects in the soil away from my plants. So, for example, marigolds keep nematodes from attacking your tomatoes. So you always plant marigolds, basil, and tomatoes together because they will keep the nematodes at bay. And basil is particularly synergistic with tomatoes. So when we look at a plant, we need to understand that it is going into an existing garden, or it's going to be in and amongst other plants. Is it going to help or hurt? And most people don't look at it. They see, oh, pretty plant. I need it. Shiny thing. I got to have the shiny thing. Think about what it's going to do to your garden, because it's definitely going to affect it. When you're buying plants, you also need to know the watering requirements of that plants, because if you're going to be putting your plant system in hydrozones. Your heavy water users are on one hydrozone. Your low water users are on another. If you mix those hydrozones up, you're going to have insect and disease problems that you can't cure. If I overwater a plant, it is susceptible to Phytophthora, Fusarium, and Verticillium wilt. Botryiosphaeria is another disease that they'll get. Armillaria malea, oak root fungus. So overwatering a plant that is in a mixed hydrozone because you're favoring plants that need water, and they're mixed in with plants that like dry. Well, something's got to die, and it's usually the plants that can't take that amount of water. They're going to develop a disease process, and it's going to kill them. Again, this is your future self. You're making decisions about your future self. So think about a plant garden as a planting guild. And there's a ton of information on planting guilds online. I can show you just a basic planting guild. There's a fruit tree guild. And there's usually 7 layers to a planting guild. How to build a permaculture planting guild. Tons of information about it. If I go to, and this is ornamentals and veggies, if I go to something like this, here's a fruit tree guild. Let's see if I can increase this. So here's a fruit tree guild. Got a nitrogen fixer in there. You got the fruit tree in there. You got herbaceous layer, a pollinator, an insectary, food, mulch, ground cover, pest deterrent, a dynamic accumulator. And a dynamic accumulator is a plant that pulls minerals and stuff out of the soil to feed your fruit tree. So there's tons of guilds out there. Here's another guild. Pollinators, insectary, fruit tree, ground cover, fruit bushes or shrubs, mulch, nitrogen fixer. Pick one. There's tons out there. So this is a book by Bryce Ruddock, and he has oak guilds, service tree guilds, apple tree guilds, bee guilds, tree hazel guilds, evergreen guilds, whatever you want. And so start thinking of your garden as a guild and plant synergistic plants so that you form a relationship in and amongst the plants. So multi-layer planting, a standard plum with a genetic dwarf peach. Look who's here, clover, pea family. Where's it next to? It's next to the heavy feeders. Comfrey, dynamic accumulator. Society garlic. This is a deterrent plant. It resists other insects. Marigolds, we already talked about marigolds. They repel nematodes. Yarrow, it's got an umbel. What's going to attract? Beneficials. So when you begin to build your garden so that everything works in the garden, including the insects. You want insects on your plants. And I know people say, no, I don't, Frank. What do you hate birds or something? What's the deal here? Birds eat insects. The reason that the bird populations are dropping significantly, and we've lost 74%, by the way, is the use of chemicals on insects that don't need to be sprayed. So caterpillars, for example, is the ideal baby bird food. Baby birds can't eat seeds. They don't have a crop. And so mama bird and daddy bird are bringing caterpillars in at the rate of once every 3 minutes. Three baby birds in a nest will eat anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 caterpillars a day. They got to get that from somewhere. And so you want to put in plants that the birds can get caterpillars. Everything eats caterpillars. So that's what this planting guild is all about. Cooperatives, manufacturers, messengers, interactors, traders. It's a guild. And so when we select plants for this guild, we need to understand what that plant is going to contribute to that guild. Is the plant medicinal? So a lot of herbs are medicinal plants. Can I use it to make medicine? And if you don't know how to do that, there are a number of books. I highly recommend Rosemary Gladstar and her herbal books. She has a number of them. So this is Rosemary Gladstar. She's written Herbs for Long-Lasting Health. She has a woman's herbal This is a great one. This is a beginner's guide for medicinal herbs. This is an outstanding book for someone who's just getting into it. Herbal Recipes for Vibrant Health is Rosemary's book. There's one, a woman's herbal guide somewhere in here. Herbs for Children's Health. You got kids with asthma? You can grow plants that'll cure the asthma. I've got a recipe for it. Herbs for Stress and Anxiety, Natural Beauty. This one is outstanding. Fire cider. Anybody making fire cider? This is the time of the year to be using and making fire cider. You can make it with your plants. So these are just a number of the books that she's written with the idea that you can plant medicinal plants. You can interplant medicinal plants with your ornamentals. Just know the difference. Know which ones are. Rosemary, oregano, thyme, sage. All those are medicinal plants. You can also use them to cook. Bay, I have all of those in my garden right now, all of them. And I use them to cook. I don't buy the powdered stuff because I want it fresh. So when you're buying plants, look for the plants that are medicinal and incorporate them in your garden. They're usually tough plants. They're usually drought tolerant. They usually attract beneficial insects and resist detrimental insects. So you want to understand herbal qualities and medicinal properties of your plant material. Any questions out there, Samantha?
No questions right now.
Everybody fall asleep out there or something? Salt resistance. So synthetic inorganic fertilizers have a salt in them. And if you're using synthetic inorganics, you're actually causing the soil food web to decline because you're killing it with salts. And so you don't want to use inorganic or synthetic inorganics. It's also bad for the water supply. We don't like to have them in our water supply. The end result of any of these synthetic inorganic fertilizers, it's going to run off and eventually become part of our water supply. Using synthetic inorganic fertilizers, especially those with high nitrogen, is like crack for plants. They react and they produce weak rank growth. And this weak rank growth is susceptible to insect and disease attack. So you want to understand the fertilizer requirements of any plant before you buy it. What does it need? Is there an organic alternative? Yes, there are. There's tons of them. Lingso Garden Materials carries a lot of organic natural fertilizers, and they'll show you how to use them. So don't get a 50-pound bag of synthetic inorganic. For every pound of fertilizer of the synthetic inorganic, it takes 1 gallon of diesel fuel to make that. So essentially what you're paying for is 50 gallons of diesel fuel to produce that synthetic inorganic fertilizer. So don't use it. The organics are just that. They're organic. Bat guano. How much diesel fuel does it take for a bat to poop? None. In case you didn't know the answer to that, I'd just help you out a little bit. So you want to think about your fertilizer use. Air pollution. Do I live in a polluted area? Yes, you do, actually. Can this plant take air pollution? Air pollution closes the stomata on the plant and it can't breathe. If there's a lot of sulfur dioxide in the air, and there is, the plant can actually use sulfur dioxide as a mineral in its fertilizer program. So plants will take that stuff up and use it. Longevity of a plant. How long is it going to live? Birch trees, 35 to 50 years. Acacia trees, 25 to 30 years. Oak, 200 to 300 years. Redwoods, 300 years. Penstemon, 50 years. How long is the plant going to be around? Lavender, 3 to 5 years. So the longevity of the plant is important. Again, your future self. How many times do I want to put a lavender in? Which lavender is a lot longer lived? Is it Provence? Is it Hidcote? Which one is it? Am I buying a lavender primarily because I like the color of this one? Or do I want to use the lavender to make lavender ice cream? What's my goal? Do I want to make a nice sachet and put it in my sock drawer? What do you want to do with lavender? So the longevity of a plant is key. Establishment rates. So California natives take about 2 years to establish before they're drought tolerant. So that means you have to irrigate them. And they need a reasonable amount of irrigation. They're not heavy water users, but they're not light either, especially during their establishment period. There are websites that will help you understanding the water needs. I highly recommend CNPS. They are in Santa Clara Valley chapter. There's also a San Francisco, but it does, they have a lot of events. So this is a great place to join. They do conservation events also. They'll talk about invasives. So you don't want to buy an invasive plant for certain. And they will talk about the kinds of plants that you should be using. So resources, books, presentations. You can go in here and see all the past presentations. Here's one, Natives for Clay Soil. Patricia Evans. Patricia is a former student of mine. She's very good. She knows what she's doing. She did this presentation August 28th of 2019. Guess what? It's recorded. You can watch it. Here's Susan's, Juanita Salisbury's presentation. She's going to give you native plants for a pollinator gardens right here. Here's one that I did, Edible Native Garden by me. Lawn Removal and Native Garden Installation by Devaluna. Aesthetic Pruning. Design it yourself native garden. Rain gardens. Tending your native garden through the years. This is Peggy Duvall. She's an excellent designer. Easy to grow, drought tolerant native plants. Ecology of vernal pools. No-mow native lawns. Jody Sheffield. Jody Sheffield is one of the best agronomists I've ever met. That woman has forgotten more than I know. She is wicked smart. And she's the agronomist up at Delta Bluegrass. So this would be a great one to watch if you want a no-mow native lawn. Monterey Pine Forest, on and on and on and on and on. There's seminars that you can get with CNPS. They also have plant lists that you can get from them that give you things like how long does the plant need to establish? What's its bloom time? When do I prune it? Helen Popper has a book for our area. It is the California Native Gardening Month-by-Month Guide by Helen Popper. This is a fantastic book for California natives. This one is good too. This is Carol Bornstein, David Frost, and Bart O'Brien. California Native Plants for the Garden. This is an older book. This is Judith Larner Lowry, Gardening with a Wild Heart. Fantastic book. This one's good too. Glenn Keeter, Harley Middlebrook. If I were to choose one or two, I would make this about fourth. Make this one, these two, number one and number two. And this one, just because I really liked the message in this book. Gardener's Guide to California Wildflowers, good book. Seed Propagation of Native California Plants. This is a great book. There's an older book of this that's in and around. Bruce Hagen, Compatible Plants Around Oaks. And that's one of the next subjects I'll be talking about. Do you have trees in your garden? What kind of tree is it? And how much water is that tree pulling out of your system? What types of plants will work under this type of tree? If I have a redwood tree, redwoods like a lot of water. The plants that you would put under a redwood tree will kill an oak tree. If I have an oak tree, what kinds of plants can I plant under there? So the types of trees in your garden are also going to determine the types of plants that are going to work in your garden. So understand that. The root structure of your plant. Many plants have aggressive root structures. And the charge on the root of plants is negative. The charge on water, it's a bivalent molecule. It has a oxygen molecule that is negative and two hydrogen, which are positive. That root system is negative. It sees those two positive hydrogen ions and it hauls for it. So if you have a root that is aggressive, it's going to find your water pipes. Again, it's not an if, it's a when. It's going to find them. It's also going to find the foundation of your house. It'll crack your swimming pool. So when we talk about roots, you need to understand the structure of that root. Is it aggressive? Is it fibrous? What kind of root system am I dealing with? If I buy a living Christmas tree and it happens to be a redwood, I need to know that that redwood is going to get 60 to 80 feet tall, and it's going to tear up any concrete, eat my water lines, and perhaps eat the family dog while it's at it, because it's aggressive. Oak trees, on the other hand, don't have an aggressive root system. I wouldn't put a oak tree that's going to get 80 feet tall next to my house, but just know that the structure of the root system of these particular kinds of plants is different for each kind of plant that you're putting in your garden. And that includes some of the smaller plants. The root systems of these plants determines, again, the maintenance of your future self. Do these plants attract habitat? So let's take kiwi. Anybody know what kiwi attracts? Kitties. Kiwis attract cats. If you've got someone in your family that's allergic to cats, you may not want to put a kiwi in your garden. If you love cats, put 100 of them in. And then you can be the crazy cat person on your block. So you want to know what the plant attracts. Certain plants attract birds. Do I want lots of birds in my garden? Yes, you do. And if you do put that plant in there, there's another thing that you need to do. You need to supply water for them. So put in a little water fountain for the birds, and they'll splash, they'll clean themselves, they'll drink water. You'll get bees in there puddling. You'll get butterflies that are in there puddling on that water supply. So what kind of habitat am I attracting? Do I want butterflies in my garden? Certain plants attract those. So the poster child of that is the monarch, of course. Everybody loves the monarchs. But there are many other types of butterflies that live in our Bay Area that are attracted to specific kinds of plants. And so you want to understand the insect relationship of the plant before you buy it. So habitat is key. You notice that I haven't talked a thing about the aesthetics of the plant, the leaf color, the texture, the form, the flower. I haven't said a word about that yet, because that's the last thing you look at. You got to do your homework. You're bringing a living being into your life, and you need to understand what it needs before you bring it in. I get people all the time that say, "Oh, I don't have a green thumb. I kill plants." And the reason that they kill plants is because they don't understand the plant. It's like having a child and not knowing what to do to raise that kid. You gotta know a few things to raise that kid. Well, that plant is now a kid that you need to raise. You have a responsibility there. In terms of sustainability, if you're one that's killing plants all the time and you are saying that you're sustainable, you're not. You're killing too many plants. So visual criteria of the plant, of course, is important. But do all the other things first, and then look for the visual criteria. Does my plant get fall color? That usually means it's going to be deciduous. Do I want deciduous versus evergreen? I've had, when I had my company, I had clients, "Oh, I don't want an evergreen," or "I don't want a deciduous plant. They're messy." It's the other way around. Evergreens throw their leaves all year round. Deciduous plants throw them for a month. It's the evergreen plants that are much more messy than the deciduous plants. So do I want evergreen? Do I want deciduous? Deciduous usually means I get fall color. Do I want some fall color? If you're a native Californian, you don't know what fall color is. If you're from Maine, you know what fall color is. And so people who have transplanted from Maine, they like a little fall color in their garden. I'm colorblind, so fall color and I don't agree so well because I can't see it. I can see that it's fall color. I get that much, and I get that it's pretty. But if you said, "Frank, what color is that plant over there?" and I would have to ask my wife. So fall color, leaf color. Certain leaf colors are there for a reason. So leaves with silver are reflecting light back. They're a little more drought tolerant. Leaves with hairs on them keep insects from landing on them and chewing on them. The hairs also reflect light back. Dark green leaves, more photon energy. They absorb more light and more heat. Do the leaves twirl up? So one of the ways that plants are drought resistant is that instead of laying their leaves horizontally to catch as much sun as possible, they flip their leaves vertically. Manzanitas do that. And that's one of the reasons that they're so drought tolerant, because they flip their leaves up. Do you like that look? You may not like that look. Well, rhododendrons, when they are stressed, flip their leaves down. And then once they get water, they bring their leaves level again. Certain plants are indicator plants. Rhododendron happens to be one of them. They'll tell you when your garden needs water. So the leaf color is important. A lot of people want a silver leaf color and then they bounce a green off it, or they're going to bounce some color plants off of it. If you look at the photograph that's behind Samantha, you're seeing a lot of different textures and colors of plant material. And those leaf structures and colors are there for a reason, and they do things. They're not only there for the aesthetics, they have a job. And that job is to either bring in more photon energy, repel photon energy, turn the leaves vertically so they don't dry out. So they have a job. What's the texture of a plant? So if you look at that upper right corner behind Samantha, you're seeing a palm tree back there. The texture of that particular plant is different than the texture that's on the lower left. The texture of a plant defines the garden. So many designers are going to be working with varying textures to get a garden that has interest. What's the form of the plant? Is it upright? Is it mounding? Is it like that palm tree? Or it's tree-like? So the form of the plant is important in that it really determines, well, an example, in Japanese gardens or Japanese gardening, they prune their plants so that they become sculptural. And so the plant becomes a sculptural element in the garden. So when we look at the form of the plant, we're talking about a sculptural element that the plant has inherently within it. And so when you're choosing plants, what kind of a form do I want? Do I want a ground cover? Do I want it upright? What am I trying to accomplish with this garden? So if you look in the upper left of this photograph where there's a couple of boulders, you see a couple of low-growing plants because you want to see the boulders. So I'm not going to put a big plant in front of those. I want to see the boulders. I want to admire my rock work. So I'm going to get plants that are of a lower form to emphasize my boulders. What's my flower? Color, time of the year, and colors. You can get about any color you want nowadays. There is a black rose. They've already developed a black rose. Took them years, but they did it. They're still working on a blue rose. They're close. They haven't quite got it. It's bluish. And so when we look at the flowering of a plant, what colors do you want? I'm absolutely forbidden to put yellow in my front yard. I can't do it. I'm Italian. I like yellow. I see yellow. I can tell what yellow is, but I'm forbidden to put it in my front garden. I can put yellow in my back garden. I'm okay with that, or the powers that be, my wife, will allow me to put yellow in the back garden, but not in the front garden. And my designer who helped me with my front garden also said, I cannot put yellow up there. So the color of the flowers is important. When does it bloom? If I'm trying to put together a garden to attract pollinators, well, what kinds of plants do I want to pollinate? And I want those pollinator plants to be blooming at the same time as the plant that needs to be pollinated. So I'll give you an example. Tomatoes need a pollinator. And so when you're growing tomatoes, you're going to be putting in pollinator plants to attract bumblebees, Apis mellifera, because they go in and they buzz pollinate tomatoes. So selecting the bloom time is important. If you're doing kiwi to attract cats, and you want the fruit of the kiwi, you need two kiwis. You need one male and one male kiwi plant will fertilize 13 female plants, but they have to be blooming at the same time. So when I'm selecting kiwi, I'm going to be selecting the male and the female so that they're blooming at the same time. So selecting plants for their bloom and their bloom time is important for the garden. A lot of people want spring blooming plants and they just want it green the rest of the year. Remember, to produce a flower, a plant needs energy. It needs water. It needs fertilizer. And don't use the synthetic inorganics again. Use the naturals, because the plants know how to handle those way better than the synthetic inorganics. So the types of fertilizers. So if I'm growing tomatoes, I'm using a specific kind of fertilizer to get the plant green. And then I want to develop fruit. So I'm going to be changing my fertilizer to a type of fertilizer that will produce fruit. So my bloom time is really important for establishing my garden. What is the future size of my plant? What kind of structures is it going to be around? If I've got a window, do I want to look out into my garden, or do I want it blocked? If I'm got a window on the south side, what kind of plant do I put in there so that during the summer my windows are covered, and in the winter I'm getting light and heat into my windows? Well, I'm going to put a deciduous plant in there. What plant is the best? Depends on your garden. So the future size of the plant is important. Frost tender. Our frost tender zones are all over the board in the Bay Area. If I go up into Los Altos Hills, it's 10 to 20 degrees cooler in those canyons up there than it is in downtown Palo Alto. So my frost tender guide is key in selecting plant material. I need to know what the last date of frost in my area is. Traditionally, it's right around November 15th. For the beginning, the first frost of the year. Don't know whether we're going to hit that this year, although the weather is changing. And traditionally, March 15th is the last frost date of the year. But with climate change, we're seeing a little bit of a variation there. So you want to figure out the frost tenderness of the plant. A lot of this information is online. A lot of it is in books. A lot of it is on the little placard that comes with the plant. It will tell you the frost tenderness of that particular plant. If you're buying frost tender plants, you want to plant them in a protected area where they don't get wind, and it's near the house where it's a little warmer, or off a wall where you're getting reflected heat. If in fact you do plant citrus, and citrus are frost tender, one of the ways that you can protect them is to buy old Christmas tree lights, the incandescent type, and put them on your citrus tree and plug them in when you know that you're going to get a frost. The tree appreciates being accessorized that way. And it also protects it from frost. And you want the incandescents. LEDs won't work. But you can go to the thrift stores and buy those things all day long, or you can go online and buy them. People don't want incandescents anymore. Well, you can use them for your frost tender plants to protect them when we have a suspected frost coming in. So know the frost tender parameters of your plant, and know when frost is going to hit your area. What else do I need to talk about? I think I hit just about everything. Any questions out there?
We don't have any questions in the Q&A, but again, feel free to use the raise hand feature or type it in, and then I can allow you to unmute to ask your question.
Perfect. Yeah, I've given you a lot of information tonight, and I hope this helps you buy good plants. I really do. It's sad when people buy plants and they just die because they just don't understand it. And I want you to go to the store with an education so that you can um, provide your garden with some beauty. And if you want more information, I teach at Foothill College. We have one of the best horticulture programs in the Bay Area. The winter quarter is just opening up. We have 12 different course offerings for the winter quarter. We have 3 short courses: propagation, landscape lighting, and landscape design forum. Those are 4-week classes, and they're going to be on Monday night. I'm teaching a soils class on Thursday. It's a 12-week class, everything you ever wanted to know about soil but were afraid to ask. I teach turf. Turf is not going to go away. Sorry, Samantha. It's around to stay, so you need to know how to manage it. We're teaching a couple of design classes. Denise teaches all the design classes. I'm teaching fall skills. I'm going to be teaching a construction class. There'll be an irrigation class that's going to be showing up a little later on. It's not on the schedule yet, but it will be. It teaches you, it demystifies irrigation. Everybody is so afraid of irrigation. They don't know how to build it. They don't know how to troubleshoot it. They're clueless. And so they hire some hack who comes out and does a lousy job. Well, in 4 weeks, in this 24-hour course, you will know how to build it. You'll know how to troubleshoot it, and you'll know how to fix it. Save yourself some time and some money, and you'll know what products to use. A quick tip: never buy your products at big box. They're not commercial grade. How many times do you want to install your irrigation system? Once. If you buy from big box, that number goes up. Contractors don't shop at big box. They go to the irrigation houses. They go to the professional irrigation houses, Horizon, Ewing, Site One, and they buy from there. A little tip on irrigation: if you're going to the irrigation houses, don't go when the contractors go, because they will ignore you. You're a one-time shopper. Contractors are there 4 or 5 times a week. When I had my company, I was giving these stores $20,000 a month. If I came into the store and you were there, they're going to ignore you and they're going to give me donuts and coffee. So you want to go when the contractors are not there. 7:30 in the morning, the contractors are all over these stores. Don't go. 9 in the morning, contractors are gone. They're installing. They're there at noon, because a lot of these irrigation stores have pizza and hot dogs for the contractors because they want to bring them in. So don't go at noon unless you want to sit around and have a hot dog and wait till about 1:30, and then they can help you. 4 o'clock, the contractors are back. Don't go. Go before. So these irrigation stores want to have your business, but I guarantee you that they will ignore you if you even smell like a homeowner. And they have a device at the door that when you walk in, there's a little bell that goes off under the counter, and it goes, homeowner. It's true. So they're not going to wait on you, or they don't want to fuss with you. 9 o'clock, they'll answer all your questions. 7:30, they're going to ignore you. Just the way it is. So if there's no other questions, up to you, Samantha. I'm just the dancing monkey. You're the boss here.
Well, I'll give it a couple more minutes, but yeah, thank you so much, Frank, for sharing all of your knowledge today and for your presentation. I took some notes on some of the links that you shared, so I will compile those, and I will be sending all of our registered attendees a follow-up email in a couple of days when this recording is available. and then I will list out all of that information on there, plus some information about those classes that are being offered as well.
And if you have questions, email me. I do answer my emails. It's on the Foothill website. That's just a way for me to force you to go to the Foothill Horticulture website.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'll also include that as well in the email.
Thank you, Samantha.
But yeah, if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and end the webinar. Again, thank you all so much for attending. We will have we have quite a few more webinars planned for the rest of this fall season, so you can find some more information on that on Bosca's website.
Yep, I'm doing one on Saturday at 10 o'clock, I believe.
Ooh, what's the topic?
Lawns, removing them.
Okay.
So if you're interested, join me at 10 o'clock on Saturday.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your kind attention, and I hope you picked up one thing tonight and maybe two.
All right. Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.